After 10 years of censorship, blacklisting, cancel culture, all of that, finally it starts to recede a little bit. Finally, they start to open it up, and all of a sudden, the #1 shows, it's like Tucker, Candace, Nick Fuentes. Surprise, surprise. When you stop censoring the conversation, people have an appetite for white identity, criticism of Jews in Israel, criticism of feminism. Guys like Andrew Tate become the most famous people in the world. So that's #1. Where did the generational come from? Well, they stopped suppressing me for a short amount of time.
That's what's great now about Nick's content being allowed to be put on platforms like YouTube and other places, is now, because it used to be easy, just go, he's this and this, we don't need to platform him. Whereas now he is getting platformed, and it's exposing the people who just wanted to kind of box him up into one thing and not debate him. People like Ben Shapiro now, who everyone obviously knows is ducking Nick Fuentes because he just wouldn't stand it. He wouldn't last a debate with Nick. He'd get absolutely steamrolled by him. And that's why this year, especially people like Ben Shapiro, have completely declined in terms of popularity because of Nick Fuentes now becoming so public and exposing people like Ben Shapiro.
For roughly half of this year, I had no obstacles on that front, and I became massive. #2, and this is the other thing that nobody ever talks about. Where did the generational run come from? #2. Again, a lot of people say, well, he's expressing a popular discontent, but here's where he gets it wrong. Well, he's expressing this popular anger, this, that, or the other. The generational run really got off the ground roughly around May and June. And why is it around May or June that this show started to gain a lot of traction? It was because of a very specific news story. It wasn't a particular collaboration. It wasn't a particular interview. Up until the middle of this year, I didn't get a major interview. I had some good interviews. I'm not knocking them, but I didn't get really a massive mainstream interview until later into the summer. But I had my biggest show to date at that point in June, having not had any major mainstream collaborations. Nobody put me on. Nobody had me on a massive show. The biggest show that I had to date in the middle of the year was during the Israel-Iran war. My biggest show to date this year was when Israel bombed Iran and started the war. And then my biggest show to date after that, which was even bigger, was the night that the United States bombed Iran. Why do you think that is? It's because in 2024, I was well known as being one of the only people that didn't vote for Trump. And I didn't vote for Trump because I predicted he would bring us to war with Iran. And I had been predicting for years that it would play out in exactly that way. Ever since October 7th, I had...
This just kind of plays into what I've mentioned on previous videos, which is that Nick Fuentes isn't something that's just going away. It's not, obviously he does all these rage baiting and stuff, and that's what people who don't understand what Nick Fuentes is just kind of go to that and fucking quotes that he said on a live stream show. But in terms of like stuff like predicting that America would bomb Iran and what Trump would do when he gets into power, it shows that he's not just a rage baiter. Like, this is not a movement or anything that's going to go away, and which is why I think it's a good thing that they've started to properly platform him, because it's allowed people to view his content, and it's sort of opened their eyes to what's kind of really going on. And it then allows people to make up their own mind. Like, if you can't even view his content, how are you supposed to have an opinion on someone who you've never even seen? Whereas when you can actually view his content and listen to what he's saying, then you can make an actual educated opinion on Nick Fuentes as to whether you like him or not.
Predicted that Trump would be elected because he is the pro-Israel candidate, and he would be elected in part because he would take us to war with Iran in fulfillment of Israel's multi-year, multi-front, regional ambitions to create a greater Israel and neutralize all their enemies. And so when Israel bombed Iran and the United States followed up with airstrikes of its own, people ran to watch the show to see what I had to say about it because I was the only one that predicted it. So I didn't launch the generational run because I was being a shock jock, because I was trolling, because I played this shell game where I pretend to be mainstream and I go on Bradley Martin and I act one way and then I go on my show and act like a jerk. The generational run started because I was right, because I was speaking the truth about Jews and Israel, but also their relationship with Trump. And I was the only one who did it. I was the only one that stuck it out and said that, even in 2024, which is pretty late in the game for someone like me. Pretty late in the game, actually, for everybody. Just when everybody thought they had it all figured out about Israel, about Trump and the Republicans versus the Democrats, just when everybody thought they had it all figured out, I threw a big curveball and said, there's something that people are missing, which is that Trump is being allowed to walk through into the halls of power because they know that he will scuttle any diplomacy with Iran. That'll be their opportunity to carry out these strikes. And that's exactly what happened. And it was thanks to my analysis, which was precise and specific and accurate, which is where the whole thing started. And then once people watched the show, they said, wow, okay, so this guy isn't just some hateful maniac. He actually knows what he's talking about. We're actually learning information. We're actually getting good analysis. And it's not just a crackpot conspiracy theory. It's based in reality. That's number two. Number three, and this is maybe more to the point, this is the biggest thing. Where did the generational run come from this year? And this is speaking a little bit more to those issues that people talk about. They say, well, it's the housing prices. They say it's the left bullying everybody. It's this, that, or the other. I think, to put it very simply, in the most basic and simple possible terms, people have an appetite for this show because they see that the country is dying. In the simplest version of the idea, and I've been saying it all throughout the year in one way and another, the simplest form of the idea is that people recognize the country is dying. And what exactly does that mean? I think we understand it very deeply when we celebrate Christmas. Because Christmas is something that used to be sacrosanct. And in many ways, we identify Christmas as a quintessential American holiday. Maybe we shouldn't. And maybe that's misguided. And maybe there's even something sacrilegious about that. That's actually a source of criticism and cynicism. Santa Claus is a creation of Coca-Cola, and people say the holiday is too consumerist. It's too commercial. And people say maybe we've gotten away from the true meaning of Christmas or the true spirit of it or something like that. But I believe that the sentiment that surrounds Christmas and the traditions that surround it, whatever you may think about them, the shopping and Santa Claus and the tree and the music and all those things, if there's anything that reminds us what it is to be who we are, it is Christmas. That is the most treasured and maybe the most shared memory that we all have in common from our childhood. That's maybe the one decent thing, even in the 21st century, that we all still have. Maybe that's the one day in every person's childhood, from coast to coast, wherever you are, whoever you are, where you remember what it feels like to be home. When you're surrounded by family, when you're at the tree, Santa brought the presents, having Christmas or Christmas Eve dinner. And we see the way our country is going and we realize there won't even be a Christmas in the new America. Forget about the rest of it, which is a little bit all over the place. Maybe not everybody plays baseball anymore, and obviously politics has polarized everybody, and a lot of things about our country have changed. But we're looking down the barrel of a future where in 50 or 100 years, maybe one day the country wakes up and it's just December 25th, and it doesn't mean anything. And maybe people are out working and the shops are open and people are at school. And how many people are even celebrating? Are there public celebrations? You see, for example, in Europe, they had to shut down the Christmas markets. They had to shut down many of the Christmas celebrations because they are being invaded by Muslims and Africans that not only don't celebrate Christmas, but are hostile. There was a church in Scotland where a statue of the baby Jesus was decapitated. And they defaced the church with a message that said, "You're finished here. You're finished here." And they decapitated a statue of the baby Jesus. And it's hard not to feel like that isn't true.
Just to kind of go into, obviously you can tell by the accent I'm English. I'm from a place a little bit souther to Edinburgh, to Scotland. This thing happened in Edinburgh. It was on Christmas Eve, and weirdly you didn't really hear much about it in the news. So it's nice that Nick Fuentes was aware of this. But it goes to show, I mean, what he's talking about with America. I'm sure you can tell by the accent, I'm from Britain. Britain's experiencing the exact same thing, which is a decline in British culture and kind of an attack on it, I'd say, too. It's not just a case of a decline, it's like a direct attack. I mean, there's been cases in the UK where people have been putting out Union Jacks like all through the streets. It makes the streets look really nice. You've got all the lampposts and Union Jacks and St George's flags on there. And people have actually got offended by that and tried to take them down. There's been like big unrest just because people are putting up the English flag. So I can relate 100% to what Nick's saying here. One of the worst in the world in terms of the migration and the attack on British culture.
And you see that everywhere you go, everywhere you look, in every way. You see it when you're driving in traffic. You see it when you go to work, when you send your kids to school. It just isn't the same country anymore. And there's something incredibly dispiriting.
Exactly the same thing going on in Britain. Exactly the same thing. I know obviously he's talking about America, and I have a big interest in America. I think it's one of the greatest countries in the world. But literally exactly the same thing is happening in Britain. And this is why Nick, I'm not sure if people are aware, but this is why Nick is now very popular in the UK as well, because there isn't many people pushing what Nick is saying in the UK for obvious reasons. Obviously all the issues of free speech. But that's why Nick is so big in the UK too, because the same thing is happening in the UK and Europe. But yeah, just wanted to kind of cover this. Nick kind of looking back on 2025. Again, I think in 2026, this is just something that's going to gain more momentum and grow. It's something more and more people are waking up to because his content is now allowed on social media. People are actually able to make up their minds. So they're able to watch his content, make up their mind. And as a result of them being able to view his content, he's growing like crazy. But yeah, is Nick right? I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. Stay based. I'll see you on the next one.